Home Depot just reporting its earnings. You saw those numbers bouncing around for the Dow futures. Home Depot is a Dow component, and that might be part of the reason. You can see right now, Home Depot shares are off by about 1%. The company reported earnings of $3.56 a share. That missed estimates from the street by about 3 cents. Revenue came in at $39.9 billion, and that beat the estimates of $39.3 billion. Comp sales were down by 0.3%. That was more than the drop of 0.1% that analysts expected. But the company did show pretty marked improvement through the course of the quarter. Take a look at this. If you were looking at the comp store sales for the month of U.S. comps for the month of February, were down by 3.3%. They rose by 0.3% for the month of March. And then for the month of April, they were up by 1.8%. I spoke with the CFO, Richard McPhail, and he talked about how for the first 2 weeks of May, that was pretty consistent with customer growth. That continued to show some of those numbers where, again, the comps were up by 1.8%. This was for U.S. comps. And that trend continued for the first 2 weeks of the second quarter. HD sales made a strong progression through that entire quarter as we were talking about these things. And Richard McPhail said that momentum has really continued when it comes to small projects for customers. He said they have yet to see an uptick with the bigger projects that require financing. He thinks that's because of high rates. At least that's what happens when they ask their customers why they're not doing those bigger investments. Now, he said overall they're trying to control for everything that they possibly can. Investments both in terms of speed and reliability. They did say pro customers had positive turns for the first quarter. And when it comes to tariffs, that's really the big question that everybody's wondering about. After what we heard from Walmart last week, we'll be hearing from Target this week. He said tariffs, when it comes to tariffs, it's pretty important to give context that for Home Depot, more than 50% of our purchases are sourced in the United States. He says the vast number of suppliers have diversified sourcing. And he said this, 12 months from now, no single country outside of the United States will represent more than 10% of Home Depot's purchases. He says because of our scale, great partnerships with our partners and our suppliers, and productivity, we continue to drive our business. He said we intend to generally maintain our current pricing levels across our portfolio, and that's pretty different than what you've heard from most of the rest of these big companies, these big retailers that have to bring in a lot of products from China and beyond. So he said they've been working on this for about 10 years. It's a little easier for them to handle some of these things. And by the way, you can see Home Depot shares have increased by about 1.25% since initially selling off. The other thing the company is doing is affirming its guidance for the full year. It gave guidance back in December at the end of last year, and it's sticking with that guidance, and that covers a lot of different metrics in terms of total sales being up about 2.8%, comps for the full year being up by about 1% when you compare it on a 52-week period last year it was 53 weeks, but this is if you did it on a comp 52-week period. Gross margins at 33.4%, operating margin at about 13%, and diluted earnings per share, they're expecting that they will drop by about 3% from the $14.91 a share they earned in the last fiscal year.
So are they effectively saying they're going to eat the cost of the tariffs? Is that what he's trying to tell you?
Yeah. Basically, he said there's several things that they've done. He said that they've had greater than expected supply chain productivity, meaning what they can get out of their suppliers along the way. And second of all, they've been able to mitigate shrink. They did it again in the last quarter. That's 6 quarters in a row they did that. I asked why have they been able to fight the theft that was taking place in the stores. He said because over the last 2 years, they've been working with municipalities to go after organized crime rings. They've also done other mitigation in the stores that they don't want to talk about because they don't want to let the thieves know what they're doing to keep them from stealing things. And all of those things, the work that they've done internally to make things more efficient and improve their own operating margins, help them pass some of that on. The other thing, though, is that they're sourcing from different places, so they're not getting as much from China.
Well, where are they sourcing? But all these other places, right? But all this
more than 50%, and I did ask him that. There's 10% tariffs at least for every place that you go, but more than 50% of their products are sourced here in the United States. So they're in a better position than a lot of the big box retailers are when it comes from that perspective. There have been sourcing things, he said, over the last couple of years. Some product lines have moved back to the United States, including power tools, outdoor power equipment. Some flooring lines have done that. So they've already been making this push, and it's something they've been working on for about a decade.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out there's still 50% of the business that's
Less
coming.
than 50%. I don't know exactly how much. I know, he said more than 50%.
But whatever it is.
I don't know why you're arguing with me. I asked
no,
all these questions.
No. I'm not arguing with you. What I'm wondering.
Yes,
What I'm wondering is whether he or the company, the lesson of Doug McMillon of being public and saying we might have to raise prices because of tariffs, I think has been a lesson that has been internalized, at least by the people that I was talking to over the past 72 hours of the weekend. And I just wonder whether it's Home Depot or Lowe's or any of the companies that we're going to be hearing from over the next week or two that are going to effectively soft pedal
I don't think
the
that's
idea
the sense with Home Depot. You're going to have Target, which already said last quarter that yes, very much we are going to have to raise prices and raise them pretty immediately.
Right.
I don't know what they're going to say tomorrow, but I do know that Home Depot is a fairly different situation. I don't think that they would be able to go out and affirm their guidance based on a pivot that they did after Saturday from the blowback that Walmart took from the president on that day. My guess would be you're going to have a lot of CEOs who want to lay low, maybe don't want to come on and talk about things, who maybe don't want to get public about some of these issues.
That's what I was
But
trying
I
to
don't think Home
understand.
Depot could make a pivot to say we're going to affirm our guidance that we'd already given, and we think we're going to be okay and not have to raise prices. I don't think you can make that up 3 days, within 3 days of hearing that from the president.
Oh, I don't so either. I don't think either. But I think the question is whether they ultimately do raise their prices marginally or whether they do other things that they just don't indicate in this moment.
He didn't say they aren't going to raise prices at all. If you listen very closely, said we intend to generally maintain our current pricing levels across our portfolio. Now, I don't know if you saw Drudge yesterday. The lead story was a story about how a Target employee was saying, look, here come the price increases, looking at like a USB cord that's now $17.99 versus $9.99 from before. I don't know where you're going to see some of these things or if there are going to be specific instances that pop up at a Home Depot. But overall, they're saying they don't think they're going to have to raise prices significantly. I do think they're in a different position than the Walmarts and Targets of the world.